All right, we are live here in the green room. For those of you guys catching up, this is episode number 191, and we've got some very special guests. We're going to do some quick introductions. As you know, we see Aubrey, our producer. Wave hi. We got Vala, and we got Liz, Milan, and of course Jim. And let's do some quick introductions where everyone's calling in from. Jim, where are you calling in from? And more importantly, what are you talking about today?
Calling in from St. Louis, Missouri, my hometown, and talking about my new book called The Innovation Stack.
Terrific.
Ooh, yes, and we actually met in an interview where you were at Yahoo Finance, and the most interesting thing was, what did we do?
Ray and I shut down New York. Basically,
we shut down New York.
Interviews, and then they closed and fumigated the station.
Did they let you out first? Is the question.
They do that wherever Ray goes. But anyway, go
ahead. We got out. It was a trail of destruction, but
we did get out. It was honestly the last day before everything shut down. It was kind of crazy.
Awesome.
So, all right, Milan, where are you calling in from, and what are you talking about today?
Well, I'm calling in from very close to New York, so I'm in New Jersey, and I'm going to talk about business priorities in the post-pandemic world. It's an interesting world out there. We got to see how we got to reprioritize ourselves.
Terrific.
Very cool.
Terrific.
And you guys got such a huge group of people that you're working with, from clients to employees. I mean, we're talking major, massive size organizations making some quick moves and shifts. So, all right, cool. Liz, where are you calling in from?
Beautiful San Jose, California, in I guess pandemic quarantine corner is the best way to describe my neighborhood. Week 10 coming to a close. We're getting it right.
And what are you talking about?
We're going to talk about everything from a little bit on brand security and to kind of, a new conversation that's cropping up across the C-suite. We hope. At least it should be a new conversation that's cropping up across the C-suite. We'll put it that way.
Terrific.
Excellent.
Terrific.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to start soon. Aubrey, you got a countdown for us? And
yeah,
hi, everybody. Welcome to DisrupTV.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Here we go. I'm popping myself out and get started. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, and our distinguished guests your questions live, and we'll do our best to answer them during the show. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host. He's the CEO and founder of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Disrupting Digital Business. He's a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review, ZDNet, and many media publications. In my opinion, he's one of the most influential people to follow and futurist on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wang, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with my co-host, Vala Afshar, and more importantly, the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, an author himself, one of the top followers, top people to follow in social media for CEOs, CMOs, and CIOs, and also a frequent contributor to Bloomberg Business Network in Canada. So more importantly, one of my good friends here. But hey, it's not about us. It's always about our awesome guests. This week, we've got some awesome guests on a lineup. Who do we have first, Vala?
What an honor for us to have Milan Rao, who's currently the president at Wipro. Milan heads Wipro's Core Transformation Office, or MIT, Marketing, Innovation, and Technology, that's driving Wipro's business transformation and has the charter of developing transformational technology solutions. Milan also oversees the CTO office, which is Wipro's innovation and R&D hub, and defines the company's technology, vision, and strategy. On top of that, he also heads up two of Wipro's businesses globally, manufacturing and communications, driving digital transformation across the value chain for all its customers in process, industrial manufacturing businesses, automotive, aerospace, defense, and telecom sectors. He's part of Wipro's executive council, which is the apex decision-making council of Wipro's group companies. Previously, he was the president and CEO of GE's Healthcare for India and South Asia, where he managed a multi-billion-dollar business. He's a great follow on Twitter at Milan Rao, MILANRAO_. Welcome, Milan, to DisrupTV.
Thank you for the introduction, and I think there was way more than I think that I do. But it's really nice to be here talking to you.
Well, Milan, I have to shorten it because we only have a 20-minute segment. You do a lot, and Ray and I know that, and hopefully our audience will get a glimpse into the awesome amount of responsibilities that you have.
Yeah, and speaking about that, I mean, you've got a really large workforce. Tell us a little bit how big they are, what they've been doing, right? In this post-pandemic environment, I mean, you've had to do things for them and your clients at the same time. And maybe that's a starting point to talk about where we are today.
Oh, absolutely. So we have over 185,000 people in Wipro, and we manage, of course, the top 1,000, 1,100 clients all across the world. And the pandemic situation, obviously, very, very difficult one. So the first priority, of course, for us was employee safety and the safety of our customers. So everything that we had to do was to make sure that employees were safe, sound, were able to get to their places that they had to get to, and making sure that wherever they were, whether they were at home or some skeletal staff which was working, had to make sure that food, supplies, all the medical equipment, etc., was available for them. And then, of course, on to our clients. We have more than 165,000 billable people, and how we had to ensure that all of them were enabled from work from home over a very short period of a couple of weeks was a mammoth charter. We actually did that. So, just in some numbers, shipped more than 40,000 desktops, procured an incredible number of laptops, got close to 30,000 Wi-Fi dongles in order to enable them to get connected. Huge exercise, but I think very important for business continuity. Over 93% of our workforce was actually enabled for business continuity. And I think we feel very proud about the fact that we were able to do that both for our customers and for our clients. And just as an example, one of the airports that we work very closely with, they knew that they had to shut down within 48 hours. And we had to make sure that, whatever passengers that they were getting in, whatever cargo shipment that was coming in, we had to ensure that all those employees were working from home and yet enabling the entire thing. And the difficult part in this is not just the physical element of doing this, but it's also organizational change management, right? They have never done this before.
Right.
So how do you enable that to happen, I think, was as much of a challenge for us as to make sure that we do it within ourselves. And I think that's one of the big learnings in terms of how resilience can be built into an organization and with our customers.
Staggering numbers. I mean, you're moving battleships at scale here. I mean, this is crazy.
You are. But it doesn't surprise me. First of all, you're an amazing Salesforce partner. You're serving clients over 6 continents, growing your business at unbelievable rates. I visited your headquarters, and it was the first time I actually got a ride in an autonomous vehicle was on your campus.
Right.
The amount of innovation that's happening at Wipro is just amazing. But what I was more impressed, not the innovation spirit and the culture of creating amazing technology and solutions, is the core values. Your core values, you have 4 core values: be passionate about client success, be global and responsible, treat every person with respect, and underlying integrity in everything you do. And I can see these 4 core values live. These aren't posters and inspirational email signatures. I saw it in action. And what I also see in terms of your core values in action is the soul and the spirit of Wipro. You're repurposing one of your technology campuses in Pune to a 450-bed hospital to ensure society can deal with this, seismic event that we've experienced, first time in our lifetime. So it's not just about technology, but my question is about technology. I just wanted people to understand that your company's soul is what makes you successful above innovation and technology. And we're seeing a new business model to support contactless commerce as a result of the pandemic. We're seeing acceleration of digital transformation and automation, implementation of cloud-first mentality, use cases with AI is growing significantly, artificial intelligence. What does all this mean for your clients on these 6 continents? And how can you, as a business, prepare yourself post-pandemic in this new norm that we all have to, compete and survive in?
Well, absolutely. I think, I would divide it into 3 parts. The first was just the react and respond, which was very initial, employee safety, business continuity, and so on. The second part is what we're going through right now, which is, how do you make sure that everything works really well and that business as usual can start coming back to all of these companies. And then there's a third very important element that we have to deal with for ourselves and for our customers, is that as business changes in a post-pandemic world, how do you come out stronger for enabling of that business? And I think each of these three has a very different notion from a technology perspective. So I talked a little bit about the first part, but I'll talk a little bit about the second part, which is, what are we doing now? And I think, as you start thinking about customers, you have to really think about what is the normal of today, what are your customers thinking, and what are your customers feeling right now? I think the feeling part, and you talked a little bit about the social consciousness. I think it starts from what are our customers feeling, and what are our customers feeling. People are scared today. People do not want to go out to a restaurant right now, even though it's open at some places. So what do? You start thinking about making sure there's contactless takeout, which is available in restaurants. Making sure that retail organizations, which have never really thought about technology in that way, prepare themselves with curbside pickup so that they're able to run their chains. And what technology changes are required and process changes are required to enable that curbside pickup is something that we've done with a lot of different organizations. The second part of that is then, what is it that the customer is going to do next, right? There's so much of change which is going to happen, which is on e-commerce. And I'm just wondering if it's going to remain e-commerce, or is that going to become commerce, right? So how do you make sure that the way that the new set of customers that is coming to e-commerce is able to handle that? How are our platforms, how is AI, ML able to enable these new customers to decide what is it that they want to buy, how is it that they want to buy, and then enable them to go through that process in a not so difficult manner? Imagine people who've always been wanting to go and buy their own groceries, right, at a shop, because, there's a social element to it. You go out there and you do that. Now, how do they decide, how do I do this with my customer base? So I think there are fundamental thought processes about the customer that you have to do. You have to reimagine their user journeys, how that user journey can be digitally enabled. And therefore, all the technologies really, for me, are enabled.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's AI, whether it's 5G, whether it's robotics, everything's about enablement.
Yeah, no, Milan, and you're right. I mean, when you think about what's going on, we are seeing, right, that pulling through of digital automation, cloud, AI. Those are massive. If you weren't in a digital channel, people are scrambling to get in there. And now that they're in a digital channel, they're trying to figure, hey, can I automate that? And now that I'm in an automation point, can I get that into a subscription business model? All these things are converging, And when we look at this post-pandemic future, I mean, what do you think is going to stay the same? What is going to change? Because it's definitely making a huge impact, not only our business psyche, but also in our social psyche.
Well, what's going to change is fairly clear, isn't it? I mean, everything is going to go virtual. So I think that's something that we have to deal with, and it's not going to come back to the same level as before. I mean, this definitely, the virtual aspect of it is going to increase. I think there's going to be an increase in digital primacy, and I call it digital primacy because people need to look at everything from a digital perspective. I was mentioning it in another forum earlier today that I believe that the digital transformation glass ceiling has been broken by the pandemic, right? Yes. So everything it's kaboom. It's, you no longer, all the people who are naysayers of digital transformation or who were skeptics, they don't do that. They don't do that anymore. We often say in a sales cycle, you got to do POCs. Well, you know what? In digital transformation, you're living that POC right now, right? So the primacy around digital is going to be key. But what customers need to look at are what are the mega trends which are going to impact them, going forward. So what's going to happen from a social distancing perspective? what's going to happen from a buying behavior perspective, what's going to happen from information analytics perspective. How are people going to fundamentally consume information and then take decisions? So that process is going to change. And I think it's something that we all need to get used to. Individual technologies, I think, we can talk a lot about, but I think fundamentally digital primacy and how people are going to rethink the process of buying and interaction is going to change. What's going to remain is an interesting one, Ray, because I think what's going to remain are the basics. Right? We talked a little bit about trust. I think today the requirement of trusting your advisor or your partner is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
What's not going to change is social interaction, empathy for your customers. And at the end of the day, we are all in the business of people. What's not going to change are people are still going to be the same. They're going to come back. And so your orientation around people and how you work with people, whether it's your employees or your clients, I think that is going to remain. And that's the most important thing that companies like ourselves, Salesforce, Wipro, Constellation, we all have to think about.
Absolutely.
No, it's a great point. And we're getting some comments as well. I mean, Wordsmith, consumption needs to be automated. Definitely a great point here. We're also seeing transformation naysayers who haven't converted in the last 3 months will not even be around. Back to your digital primacy point, you can even ask for better comments like this. So
yeah, absolutely. And let's take it back to people, because the first time I met your current chairman, he was not the chairman of Wipro, but I met Rashad Premji when I was honored to deliver a keynote at NASSCOM, one of the most influential consortium of IT and business leaders in Mumbai. And what a humble guy, what a big brain. But it wasn't the smart conversations we had, but the accessibility, the humility, the genuine interest that I felt when I had the privilege of having dinner and having casual conversation with Rashad. And I saw that he was, proactively trying to engage with as many people at the conference as possible. And today he's working on some great projects during this pandemic. Can you share some of the initiatives that he's leading and the impact that he's having? And of course, 185,000 Wipro community behind him in terms of impact on communities.
Sure. We're very, very fortunate to be, 67% owned by the Azim Premji Foundation. And together with the foundation and the Wipro group,
that's right.
We've pledged over $150 million to fight the pandemic. And I think the major shift, and as you know, the Azim Premji Foundation is a lot about education, but I think the crisis has made the foundation also rethink and made us all rethink about, the current issue is one of making sure that people are safe. So there's a health issue. And the second part is that there's a humanitarian issue. We don't see it sitting in our offices and homes, but there are millions of people who are stranded from their homes with no livelihood. So we repurposed our, Wipro kitchens in different cities, and we prepared over the last couple of months more than 2.6 million meals that we have given to the needy.
So you shut down the campus, but kept the canteens open and
the
cafeterias open to feed people.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And then along with the foundation, the Azim Premji Foundation has actually created ration and food kits for more than 6.8 million people.
Wow.
And that's something that, you feel very, very proud to be associated with. All the people, the partners, and everyone coming together in society to deal with society. And you mentioned very briefly, one of our campuses in Pune, we've converted it into a 450-bed COVID hospital. And that's going to be working for the next 6 to 12 months. So I think, the social element of it is as important. And when I really think about technology, when I think of resilience, it's about the resilience that you create for your customers and for enterprises. But a lot of it is about the resilience that you create for society. And I think we should not be forgetting that.
For sure. Amazing work. That's more important than anything else you're doing, in my opinion. And the revered brand of Wipro will be even more, trusted and relevant given the soul of your company. So really appreciate everything you're doing.
Absolutely.
One of the things that's incredible is like you've been through a lot of these transitions and disruptions in your career. I mean, some very, very blue chip companies that Vala was talking about. And I think it's important to think about, some of the leadership lessons learned, right? Because for our audience, a lot of folks here, I mean, we got 40, 50,000 viewers of the show thinking about what leadership lessons they can learn from this, especially given the different types of industries you've been in, from manufacturing to services to other types of geographies. What's in it? What's a nugget to pull out from your leadership lesson kit?
Well, Ray, I think first and foremost, it's all about the people. I think, you need to make sure that your people are safe, they're secure, they understand what's happening. Communication is very, very important. So I think a lot of it is about managing people. The second part is, I've been in different industries and through different crises, whether it is the dot-com bust or the global financial crisis. But I think the one thing which I've learned the most is, irrespective of where you are, if you have a positive outlook towards the future and you have the resiliency, you always come out stronger. So I think it's a lot about, the resiliency and the positive outlook for the future. And the last thing is, you find amazing inspiration all around you. And, it's a little story of, this guy in Wipro who actually went back to his hometown and realized that he could not actually support because the Wi-Fi that he had available out there was actually fluctuating. And so he actually gets on to go to the nearest town where it's very difficult to go onto. So he hops onto a milk van at 5 a.m., goes through an elaborate round of 2 hours to reach the place where he has Wi-Fi, where he has a secure way of working, works the 10 hours, and then goes back on the milk van for 2 more hours back to his place. So, there is innovation, there is inspiration all around us. We just have to look and we just have to feel. And if you're open to it, then I think we can get inspired. It doesn't have to be leaders, doesn't have to be big people. It's all around us.
Awesome story. Awesome story.
This is amazing. We are here with Milan Rao, president at Wipro. More importantly, one of the top companies in the world helping out, not just in the COVID-19 situation, but with their clients in this post-pandemic world. You can catch him on Twitter at Milan, MILANRAO _ for emphasis. And hey, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your insights and leadership.
Thank you so much, sir.
Great being here. Thank you so much, Vala and Ray.
Thank you, Milan. An extraordinary president leading an extraordinary company, and follow Wipro and all their work that they're doing. Speaking of extraordinary guests, our next guest, Jim McKelvey, is a senior entrepreneur, inventor, philanthropist, artist, and author of Innovation Stack, building an unbelievable business one crazy idea at a time. This is what our show is all about, by the way. People putting a dent in the universe and with crazy ideas. Jim's is also founder of Invisibility, a project to rewire the economics of online content. He's a co-founder of Square and serves as chairman of its board until 2010 and still serves on the board of directors. In 2011, Jim's iconic card reader design was inducted in the Museum of Modern Art. I think that's a first, Ray. We haven't had a guest that has a piece in a museum. He's the deputy chair of the St. Louis Federal Reserve, and he's someone that you must follow on Twitter at 2000F, 2000F. Welcome, Jim, to DisrupTV.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
I was digging through my house to find that thing that you shove into the top of the iPhone, the Square reader. Yes, I was looking for this thing. I know I have it.
T-shirt right now. So, and this was not promotion. This just was the only shirt that was clean this morning. I'm getting behind laundry, and as you can see, I'm giving myself haircuts. So,
me too.
That's where we are.
So I'm actually going to teach my son how to cut my hair today. That's on my list of Memorial Day weekend things. But hey, so you beat Amazon in this payments game, right? This was the most interesting story, right? I'm writing a book. I'll talk more about that one of these days. But we're talking about duopolies, companies that are coming in as monopolies on day one, and a challenger comes in to take out a big force in the market that can take out the entire value chain. Let's start there, and then we'll get into the book as well.
Well, actually, that's where the book started for me too, because as few people know, Amazon attacked Square when we were 4 years old. So we were still a startup, and Amazon copied our product, undercut our price, and was just going to kill us. And when Amazon does this to a startup, the startup always dies.
Yeah.
Always, except in one case, and that was Square. So we survived. A year later, Amazon basically gave up. And they were really cool when they gave up, because they actually mailed one of these little suckers to all of their soon-to-be customers. So I respect Amazon of the way awesome. They closed it down. But here's the thing, Ray. I couldn't explain it. Like, the math against surviving Amazon is impossible to do. Yeah. And I was happy we won, but I couldn't explain what happened. So I started looking for an answer, and it took me 3 years to figure out what had happened. But what happened was we had sort of accidentally done this thing, which I call an innovation stack, which throughout history has protected companies from massive attacks and also allowed those companies to completely dominate their industry. So I'm talking the biggest bank in the world, the biggest furniture store in the world, the first airlines. Like, it's this phenomenon that recurs and recurs throughout history. And I'd never seen it explained. So I was like, I got to research this. And when I saw my research, I was like, I got to write about this. So that's how I got the book.
That's amazing. So you're talking about companies like IKEA, Southwest Airlines, Bank of America, these big companies, and the book is titled Innovation Stack. And in there you say copying is a great place to start, but you won't help you achieve transformational change. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then what also inspired you to start Square?
So the thing about copying that is it was sort of amazing to me is that everything in my world, almost without exception, is a copy of something else. All the people I know, like everything in this room is a copy of something else. This chair I'm sitting on, I'm a copy of my parents. Copying is the most powerful force in the universe if you want to make something that works. Find something that works and duplicate it. And that works in almost every situation except one where you have a new problem, a problem that has not been solved before. Then you don't have anything to copy. And so I narrowed my search from all the wonderful things in the world down to just these problems that had never been solved before. And I studied companies and people who did nothing but try to do new things. And it turns out the DNA of doing something new is totally different. And it was not something that we discussed. And the reason I think we don't discuss it is because we don't have a word in the English language for describing a business person who does something new. Now, a business person who starts a new business is called an entrepreneur. But most of those businesses, if you think about them, are actually copies. So for instance, I could go out and start a coffee shop in town, and we'd be called an entrepreneur. But 100 years ago, when the word entrepreneur was first being used, that's not how they used it. They only used the word entrepreneur to apply to this special group of business people who were doing new things and things that probably wouldn't work. So like, if you want to make money, you go into business. But if you want to change the world, you probably need to be an entrepreneur, and you're probably going to fail. So that's what we work.
So Google was the 21st search engine in 1998.
Yep.
Were they artists or were they entrepreneurs? A little bit of both?
Very, very much. I mean, Google, if you look at their innovation stack, which I've studied quite a bit, had very similar DNA to what Square did, to what Apple did, to these sort of transformational companies. Because if you look at Google and just think, well, they're just a search engine. And then you say, well, it's just a search engine. No, like, I've had friends that have tried to build search engines. And actually, one of my friends was stupid enough to try to compete with Google and build a competing search engine. And literally, it was such a stressful thing that it was a husband and wife team, both PhDs, and they both ended up in the hospital. They were so stressed out that they're having their ass kicked so hard by Google. They both ended up like literally in an ICU.
Unbelievable.
I was talking to Burnt Wall about this, if you know him, and he was talking about his time at working against Alta Vista and Fiseek, everybody in that business, Excite, and it was a very, very different time. And one of the things you talk about is like this entrepreneurship that's out there. Like, is it learned? Are we teaching this anymore? Is it hard to find? Because everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but it's not everyone is an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I think everybody wants to be an entrepreneur in the sense that they want to have a successful business and be their own boss. And successful business people are revered, and they're usually pretty rich. And there's some people that society respects. entrepreneurship in its classic sense is not that cool unless it works, or I should say until it works. And believe me, I mean, Square was not cool at all.
Painful.
It's just brutal. And, you know, we were being called idiots by very qualified people for those 2 years. And, you know, we had nothing to argue with, because literally if you're building something that's never been built before, the math is different, because you can't point to a success. Now, if I'm going to open up a coffee store, like I can look at other coffee stores, I can go to a convention where everybody, you know, knows how the coffee business works. If there's something I don't know, I can hire a consultant. But if I'm doing something that's never been done before and I run into a problem, then almost always my team and I have to figure out how that problem can be solved. And sometimes solving that problem creates another problem, or maybe two other problems. And this is what happened at Square. And by the time you solve all these problems, you end up with not just one or two things, but 20 or 30 different things that differentiate your business so much from the rest of the market that you end up basically with this new market to yourself. And that's what an innovation stack does.
Right. In your book, you talked about how you and Jack Dorsey, you sacrificed functionality in favor of beauty and simplicity. And that's what helped Square build trust and reach mass audience. Can you talk about how you, as engineer, you know, designing hardware, software, you fight that gravitational pull of trying to add more features and functions, while, you know, and the juxtaposition of keeping something simple and beautiful and intuitive so you can have the success that you have?
Yeah, so I made a fundamentally dangerous decision as an engineer, because I'm trained as an engineer, and I'm the guy who basically made this little thing.
Awesome.
The original one I made was even
Love
smaller.
it.
There's a problem with that, because this is a Square reader, and as you swipe a credit card through it, the credit card will rock. So unless you swipe perfectly level, it screws up the read. And the way to solve this is you make this device 1.5 inches longer, and then it doesn't wobble. And I made a long device and I made a short device, and I tested both of them. The long device worked much better. The short device started conversations. If I would read a credit card with a long device, people would go, "Oh, you read my credit card." If I read it with this thing, they would go, "What the hell did you just do? What? Give me that. What the heck?"
Magic.
And remember, this was 10 years ago. Nobody had ever seen something this small, let alone something that read a credit card, let alone something that plugged into the headphone jack of your iPhone. So
that's awesome.
We made a conscious decision to produce and sell or actually give away the tiny version that didn't work as well, but it got people talking and it got their attention. And my God,
I did my first Square real estate transaction. I remember it came in the clear case, came out. I stuck it in. I was super excited. You know, at that point, I had a realtor's license. I was like, "This is cool, man. I'm in."
Yeah,
unbelievable.
It is so difficult to get somebody's attention in this world. Yeah. I mean, Vala, you talk about all the stuff we do for attention. Most of it gets ignored.
Yeah,
I had this thing that was somehow a conversation starter, and I was damned if I'm going to, you know, sacrifice it just for 20% better read fidelity.
Unbelievable. There's such genius in that, and whether it was accidental or obviously you tested it, so
it was intentional. It was 100% intentional.
Yeah.
If you go to the Square office, the large prototype is up hanging on the wall.
I've seen it.
We made 40,000 of them that we never shipped.
Unbelievable.
I've seen it. And we're here talking to Jim about the innovation stack. You can see the book. It's in the upper right-hand corner if you're watching on the screen. You know, and I think one of the fun things about this book is really talking about, you know, that whole process, right, of disruption and when you disrupt, right? And you talk about something that's really important is when doing nothing is sometimes the best response. Can we start there as well? Like, what does that mean?
So when Amazon attacked us, we looked at our response. So the first thing we did was we looked for another company that had beaten Amazon as a startup, and there were none. So we had nobody to
Zero.
There was zero. So
actually,
then
there might be one, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So then the question is, well, what do we do? And the answer is, well, I guess we should change something. But we looked at all the stuff we were doing, including our price, which Amazon had undercut our price by 30%. But if we'd matched them, we would have lost money on every single transaction. Wow. And so we thought, well, that's insane. That'll just bleed us to death. And all the other stuff that we were doing for very good reasons. Now, it didn't appear that we were doing those for very good reasons to the outside world, because the outside world didn't understand what our innovation stack was. But we were doing 14 things totally different from the market. And so, the way we signed up users, the way we handled customer support, like that was not an accident. And it all made sense and it was all consistent. So when Amazon attacked us, it was very, very difficult to not change anything that we were doing. But that's what we did. We basically did nothing. And it was terrifying because like if a disaster is coming, you want to prepare, like you want to do something. And like I remember I'm in St. Louis right now. When my city flooded in 1993, like I was out bagging sand.
Wow.
And it didn't work. Like it didn't help anything. Sandbags, the river came right over, but at least you felt like you were doing something.
Right.
We didn't even fill a bag of sand when Amazon attacked.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing. So these are all like counterintuitive. I'm a former CMO, so I would have had a response team put in place. I would have tried to figure out attack vectors and this, that, and the other, and it would have most likely failed. So you're giving us examples where you had to lead and build a successful company with zero precedents, and all the stats against you because you're going, producing solution going against giants. And so can you give advice? It seems like, or my question is, do you have to be an expert to be a successful entrepreneur? Because it sounds like you were doing stuff where you couldn't have had expertise. You were doing breakthrough innovation and new business models and new solutions. So how do you give advice to folks that are nervous about this pandemic because they're worried about job security, they're worried about they don't have enough domain expertise, they can't be successful entrepreneurs? How do you go from a non-expert to building one of the most successful companies in the world?
So, and this is fundamental, and you just said it, but I'll repeat it and underline it. And that is, you can't be an expert in new. If something has not been done before,
It's so obvious. It's so obvious, but you're right.
I mean, look.
That's the quote.
It's really true. And this will hit you like a ton of bricks. Like the only time you can be an expert is if the situation has occurred many times before and we have determined best practices and standards. So I'm on the Fed right now, and there is not a single expert in world economic shutdown. We don't have one. We will.
Thank God.
Believe me, in a couple of years, we have a lot of experts. But right now, we got nothing. So don't disqualify yourself because you think you don't have the qualifications to solve an unsolved problem. I will tell you this.
Can you repeat that? That was, wow, what a tweetable. Anyway, I'll rewind and.
No. I'll say it again because look, this is why I wrote the book. This is why I wrote the book.
So powerful. So powerful.
So many, I wrote the book for a certain person. I had her in mind the whole time I was writing. She's incredibly talented. She's incredibly hardworking. But she's one of these people who every time she comes up against a problem that she doesn't feel qualified to solve, she stops, she hesitates. Now, I agree there's certain times that that's an appropriate behavior. So if I want to go out and fly a plane today, I better go get certified. I got to have a medical, I got to get trained, I got to learn how to handle stalls and FAA regulations. Like I can be certified as a pilot right now. But Wilbur and Orville Wright could not have been qualified pilots. Because when they flew the first airplane, there were no pilots in the world. So they had to do this thing where they weren't qualified to do it, but they still do it. So the reason I wrote this book is I see these people all the time who have the potential to do these great things, but then they disqualify themselves because their whole lives they've been taught, you got to have the credentials before you do the thing.
I've done that. Yeah.
We all do. We all do. And I just wanted to shout, look, get off the sidelines. Understand the difference between a problem that you can copy the solution or a problem where you need to innovate.
Jim, I needed your book 10 years ago. I would have been such a higher place right now.
Jesus, so did I. I was so... when I saw this stuff afterwards, you go through all this chaos. When I saw it afterwards, it all started to make sense. Like, first of all, writing a book is torture. I hate writing. I'm really slow. I didn't even want to write a book. Like I told Ray this, I wrote a comic book. This whole thing was a graphic novel.
I have the comic book. It was awesome.
Yeah. It's a comic book. If you want the comic book version, it's at jimmckelvey.com. You can get it for free. You can get chapter 9 as a comic. But
oh my God, awesome.
But I just felt like I had to say this because like this is the stuff that I wish somebody had told me.
What a gift! What a gift! Absolutely.
And the best compliment I've received on this book was from a guy who reviewed one of the early copies, and very successful guy. He's got a painting in his living room that's worth more than my entire house. Straight up.
Wow.
And sitting under this particular painting, he told me that if he'd read the book 10 years ago, he wouldn't have quit his last company because they were building an innovation stack. And you get so much negative reinforcement. When you're doing something that hasn't been done before,
absolutely,
the world is against you. They'll tell you you're crazy. They'll tell you why it's not going to work. You're just going to have negativity on negativity. And all this stuff that's cool about being an entrepreneur, you can forget that. That goes out the window. If you're doing something truly new, you're in a different world. And this guy, he was mega successful. But he said, if I'd known that I was on that path, I would have kept going.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, he's doing okay. I mean, it's a nice painting behind him.
Yeah, I mean,
but you're right. I mean, I know.
Great.
Absolutely. I know throughout my career, if you're someone that, first of all, struggles with imposter syndrome, so even when you have success, your question, how did you get there? Every day. But had I read your book 10 years ago, I would have had my own show on CNBC, and it would have been awesome.
We'll be watching him.
No, this is great.
Him, Kramer, Denali, on the show. Hey, we got some great comments here. It's about solutions, not money. There was a question here that was kind of interesting. What do you make of the innovation hype we are living in? That is, every company says they're innovating. Every consultant says they want to catalyze innovation. Is that real innovation?
That just makes me vomit a little bit in the back of my throat every time I hear it. Look, here's the thing. Innovation is super powerful, but it is also super difficult. And I say it flat out, I don't try to innovate. Innovate is it's a last resort for me. Okay. If I can find an existing solution, I will always copy that solution or try to adapt some existing solution to the new problem. The only time I've seen innovation really work is when it is the last resort. And by the way, this is not just me, because I'm just one guy. I'm just one data point, and I could have gotten lucky, and all my story could be irrelevant. You need multiple data points throughout history. As a matter of fact, when I was writing the book, I wasn't supposed to write a book. I was just researching for my own knowledge. And when I got enough together that I thought, oh, wait a second, I might actually have something here, I realized that I could just be deluding myself. Because it's really easy to research history and just pick the examples. They're the ones that support your idea. Like if you're willing to just like cherry pick history, you could be right about anything. So I said, okay, in order to prevent this from happening, because most of the people I studied, these entrepreneurs had died. But Herb Kelleher, the legendary founder of Southwest Airlines. So I took all my research and I flew down to Dallas, and Herb and I sat down for an afternoon. And I said, Mr. Kelleher, is this what happened? Does this fit what happened at Southwest? And he said, yes. He's like, this is it. He said, this is what we lived through. And then he pointed out a couple of things that I'd overlooked. And I was like, oh, okay, duh. And then he said, go write this. Okay.
Wow.
And I was so excited because this guy was a legend to me.
Of course.
I went out and I was so excited about writing that I decided not to write a book. I decided to write a graphic novel. So I spent a year doing a graphic novel of the whole thing. And I portrayed Kelleher as this like superhero because, I mean, the man literally flies, right? Yeah. So
without a cape too.
I know. As we have learned from the Incredibles, don't wear the cape.
Don't wear the cape. Don't wear the cape.
Kelleher. So I did all this. And then I said to Herb, you're going to love this. I'm doing it as a graphic novel. This was like a year after we met. And he hated the idea.
Wow.
He was so against. He was like, he thought it trivialized this really important thing. He said, he was in his 80s. He said, when I was a kid, comic books were not serious. And he said, I'm not going to stop you from doing what you want to do, but just leave me out. Wow. And I couldn't leave Herb Kelleher out, so I rewrote it as a text.
Amazing.
And that's why
this is amazing.
Yeah.
We are here with Jim McKelvey, co-founder of Square and author of The Innovation Stack. You can see the book above here, sold where books are sold. So get your copy as soon as you can. Follow him on Twitter at 2000F. And he's also on, I think it's Federal Reserve 8, St. Louis, District 8, if I remember correctly. So this goes back to 8th grade finance. But anyways, so thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your insights.
Terrific.
And this is amazing. We do have to catch up for barbecue and toasted ravioli. So
absolutely. Anytime you're in St. Louis, toasted rav on me.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Wow. What an unbelievable segment. I mean, we've had 600 some odd guests on the show. None of them have a piece in the Modern Museum of Art. So that's a first. Now, we do have a CMO whisperer who's our
No, I don't like either of you. I'm not talking. I don't. I'm so mad. I can't.
You can't follow
deal
that.
with my anger right now at the both of you. You have me following. Just so we're clear, Vala Afshar. I'm not. No, don't you do this at me. You have me following a guy who's feeding millions of people, literally feeding millions of people. And no, I'm wearing a Golden Girls T-shirt. He has a T-shirt of his invention of the changed finance. I don't like either of you. I'm out.
So sorry. First of all, I had never met Jim until today. I had no idea what an extraordinary storyteller.
Unreal.
And it was ridiculous. I know. First of all, he missed his calling. He should have his own show. But I'm not sorry, because you are amazing. Liz Miller, Vice President, Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, focusing on today's Chief Marketing Officer's evolution of customer engagement and the rising requirement of new security postures that account for threats to brand trust. By the way, last time Liz was here, she co-hosted the last show of DisrupTV in 2019 with Guy Kawasaki. And the show starts with Ray and her talking about Vala, and at some point, Guy's like, who's this Vala? Who's this thing? So as an evangelist for Salesforce, it was nice to see the original tech evangelist who brought the Mac to market question, who's Vala?
I was like, Bud, I'm asking for Vala. What are you thinking? Like what?
Yeah. Prior to joining Constellation, Liz oversaw the entire content and thought leadership programs for Chief Marketing Officer Council, developing programs and agendas for CMOs around the globe. She's a skilled moderator, facilitator, keynote speaker, engaging C-suite executives in hundreds of industries, webcasts, roundtables, keynote presentations, and panels around the globe. Anybody who has witnessed you host a panel knows there's second to none. You must follow Liz on Twitter at LIZK Miller, MILLER. Welcome back, CMO Whisperer.
Why, thank you. Thank you, sir. What's up, guys? What's been going on? I mean, I know that everyone's been out and about, like really super busy running errands and like nothing's really been going on. No one's been changing stuff. Milan hasn't been feeding millions of people, so whatever.
By the way, what an inspirational story. Like, honestly, when I talk about fighting imposter syndrome is when I have an executive on the show that says, yeah, we fed 6 million people in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, like we shut down our campus, but we just kept feeding millions of people. But the amazing part of that story is that it is so in line with who Wipro is as a brand. And it feeds kind of right into what got me thinking about all these things called brand security, right? Because people, I think when they started thinking about brand security, or when we talk about it like it's the brand police, like it's that little department that sits down in the corner and they're like, you used the wrong logo. That wasn't the right color, And so we think about that as brand security. But if you think of it this way, if Wipro had closed their canteens, if they didn't take that earnest, humanity-based view of what this crisis was doing to people, that would have been against their brand, right? That would have been in violent opposition to what their brand actually stands for and the promises that they are making to their customers and to their customers' customers and to the marketplace as a whole, right? So if they had shut down, went out and was like, peace out, everyone, good luck to how you're going to make it through this pandemic, that would have actually been a broken promise, right, to all of their customers. And that's at the core of brand security, right? Are you breaking your promises? And what does that actually mean? If you're promising to be a voice for humanity out in the world, and suddenly you don't treat your people with any level of humanity, all of a sudden it's a broken promise.
And the reason they don't drift from their core values and guiding principles is because they've lived
Right.
Core values and guiding principles. The Premji Foundation and Wipro are known around the world, not just India, around the world, as the most philanthropic, most giving family with billions of dollars to charitable foundations. So you're right. To live your to maintain that trust, you have to live your brand. Your thoughts, your words, and your actions have to be completely aligned. My definition of authenticity, what you believe, what you say, and what you do are completely aligned. You're right. And I bet you,
it's the corner of it, right?
And I bet you it wasn't even a hard decision for them.
No, it probably wasn't. It was probably just this natural thing of like, of course we're going to keep our kitchens open. But then also look at the other natural decisions they make. Of course we're digital, right? We're helping our customers be digital. Of course we're digital, because having that humanity, being that brand that keeps your kitchens open, that is being. It's not doing. It's who you are, right? If you're digital, it's who you are. You can't just do digital. You are digital, right? But it also goes back to how they look at security and how they look at creating this infrastructure for security where it's proactive. We're living in an age right now of COVID where you've got cyber attacks that have increased by upwards of, depends on who you listen to, right? So if you listen to the FBI, it's about 400%. If you listen to the WHO, it's about 500% globally. So we're in a time where bad actors are taking advantage of today's environment. And it's everything from phishing scams to trying to figure out who left a back door open, right? This is a dangerous, dangerous time. What happens to your brand when your customer finds out that you left the back door open? That is a forever broken down trust, right? And all of this has to be part of the conversation around brand security. You can't just talk about things like, I'm going to keep our promises, so yeah, we're going to keep our canteens open. It's also got to be, we're going to keep our promises and make sure that every single piece of our infrastructure, every conversation about security goes back to this idea of, are we making sure that our brand is secure as well? Because it's not just about the loss of revenue that you hit if you get hit by a breach, right? It is about the permanent loss of trust and that permanent loss of security and that promise that was broken with your customer if you end up in the crosshairs of one of these bad actors. So it's a new conversation.
That permanent loss piece is huge, right? I mean, kind of like that picture when we saw, airlines promising to do social distancing in the, plane, and they didn't.
Like everyone's there. You're like, that's not an empty seat. It's not when you talk about the permanent loss, I think that if anyone who's watching right now has ever been mistaken for someone who buys security, right? Like I at one point in my career, I had operations in my title, which meant that like every security vendor called me because they were like, you are an operations person. You must buy all this software. And I'm like, I really don't. But that got me thinking, why am I not involved in this conversation? Because if I'm Target, I'm really used to, or if I'm a CIO, I'm really used to the sales pitch about how much Target lost in the breach, right? Oh, they lost millions of dollars. But let's be really honest about that. That was recovered in 1.5 quarters, 2 quarters in a robust economy. So if you're weighing the cost of security, right, and what you lose if there's a breach, it's 1 or 2 quarters. I can bounce back from that. It's 3% of revenue. Okay, I'm just going to make compliance a checklist. I'm going to do the bare minimum so I can get by, because security is hard. And every CISO out there knows this. Every CIO knows this. Security is hard, right? And it's not just a firewall. It's not just this one thing we implemented. It is a series of processes and organizational change, culture change that you really have to think about and you need champions for. And I think that's the real opportunity here for CMOs, right? Because if we're out there really trying to secure our brand, if we're really out there trying to make sure that people believe that there is that authenticity behind the promise of, you give me your customer data, I promise we're not going to do anything bad with it. Yeah. What's the worst thing you can do with a customer's data? Put it in the hands of someone who doesn't care about them and is 100% going to do something bad with it, right? So all of a sudden you end up in this world where security is a brand issue. Now, What I'm not saying is for CMOs to own it, right? Like that is not the conversation here. The conversation here is for CMOs to be involved in it, to ask CISOs, what do I need to do? How can I help you? What is our posture? What is our stance? And to start looking at all of these technologies as if they are one framework for brand security, because they all touch. I mean, I think, Vala, where you work, it's a perfect example, actually, of an organization that takes this really seriously, right? That understands not only what the security posture needs to be, but then what the security posture needs to be for your customers, right? Because you believe everyone is part of the Ohana. So you got to think all the way through to that. And I think that's what everyone needs to start thinking of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Trust is our number one core value. Many people don't know that we employ the world's top ethical hackers, and we have ongoing competitions of testing our systems and our processes with the world's top experts in terms of finding holes. But so I'm going to shift the conversation to CMO agenda, and I'll keep my company in the question. In that, I remember early March, Mark, our founder, had an all hands meeting. We have all hands meeting every week. Virtual all hands meeting, and we had about 50,000 people logged in because it was one of our first all hands meeting after we had announced no
That's
travel.
Not a whole lot of people, Vala. 50,000 people. God, do some hiring, bud.
And Mark gave permission to all of us. He said that I am giving you the privilege and the right to be ambassadors for our company. We want you to reach out to customers, partners, stakeholders, communities. Share our plan, write articles, have your podcast. And so I'm giving you, as the founder CEO, permission to earn your trusted advisor.
Oh my God, as a marketer, I would have been in the background like, stop it!
I was a CMO before I was a CMO of a $900 million company before I joined Salesforce. And I'm sitting there going, what
are you doing? Like, someone throw a shoe at Mark. Totally. I would have been right there with you.
But the volume of interactions, Zoom meetings, blogs, I've written 50 ZDNet articles since March. So it inspired me to just become a content creating machine because my company founder gave me the license to do so. And I'm not alone. So this control versus collaboration mindset, what Jim talked about, we're in a situation where there are no experts. So you've got to take your old playbook and maybe just throw it away and really reinvent yourself as you go. Adopt that beginner's mindset. Free of prejudice, hungry, curious, interested. So what are the CMOs? And I know you talk to CMOs daily, multiple CMOs. What are they thinking of? Are they nervous? Are they fearful? Are they inspired? Are they all of the above? And what's on their agenda? What's really driving their
all of it? It's funny. It's kind of there's two answers, right? All of it is on their agenda, but when it really boils down to it, there's really just one word, and that's growth. And that's really top of mind for every CMO I talk to, right? Is that the CMO is the growth driver for the modern business today. And, we have dropped that mantle of branding for brander's sake, right? So this idea of the CMO that was sitting there thinking, I've got to go control Mark's message and I'm going to go review his PowerPoint 90 times. I know, I was going to say,
good luck with that one.
That CMO doesn't work at Salesforce, but
But listen, there were really smart people. And Peter Drucker said there's only two functions in business: innovation, marketing. And Steve Jobs said the most powerful person in business is the storyteller. So we've had some iconic management and business leaders that know the power of storytelling as a fuel for the growth engine.
But I think that people misunderstood what storytelling was, right? And I think that what a lot of people did, and what I think a lot of people outside of marketing still misunderstand, is we're not making up a story. A marketer's inherent job is to actually take the enunciation of what the customer is buying from us and correlate that to the products that we sell and the business that we are, right? So it's really about when people ask me what does a CMO do? And I'm like, we're kind of master translators, because we're translating the voice of our customer into what our company should be aspiring to. Right. And when I say that we're taking what our customer buys, if you ever ask a customer what they bought from you, it's never the product you sold them. Right. It's always something else. I bought time to value. I bought something that was easy. I bought something that my customers loved, right? I bought something that my customers wanted to use. So if you're a technology vendor out there, here's a message. Not one of your customers bought your platform. Like not one of your customers bought your software. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because I think that when we look at our messaging and, people will look, we talked about innovation stacks, but I always think of things in like messaging stacks, right? If we start to really take a hard look at what we do for our messaging, the vast majority of us, sorry guys, still go out and create that meatball chart of how we stack up to our competition, right? You know the meatball chart, Vala, right? It's the like, here's what my product does, and here's how we're so much better than everybody else. And when we bring out like the competitive messaging matrix, right? Because we always have to call it a matrix. It sounds really cool, right? Like you bring out the competitive messaging matrix, and all it is the meatball chart of how our products stack up against all the other products. So here's my dare for every CMO out there, especially as we're trying to get from like post-pandemic, how do I just stop the bleeding, to I got to get to growth, right? Because that's the trajectory that we're on right now. And marketers are kind of farther ahead on it than other folks in the organization, because we had to deal with the panic on day one. Well, here we are in week 10, we're now dealing with, oh crap, I got to grow, right? So like, we're already there planning that. We're kind of like fast fashion. We're like 10 months ahead of everybody else, right? So here's my dare for every marketer out there. And if you need help doing it, God knows we do it, but flip the script on your competitive messaging matrix and don't go out and actually look at how you message against their product. Go out and collectivize how all of your competition actually talks. See what everyone in the market is saying about themselves. Because here's the hard truth we're all going to learn. We all say the same things and we all sound the same.
Yeah, but I got to tell you what the lesson I learned in the last segment when Jim talked about putting the science into the art and the art into the science. He A/B tested 2 different platforms. He took the inferior platform in terms of functionality because of the beauty and art. But he did testing to realize it was a conversation starter. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when the CMO of Square was like, what the hell? You're going to take the inferior
that's not what we do. Yeah, we're a finance platform. Yeah, totally. Like it would have been like, we are a finance platform. You all be quiet. But look at what people buy. Right? Like, look at what people buy. What people buy is the promise that you deliver through your branded messaging. And if everyone in the market sounds the same, if everyone is having the same conversation, and FYI, in marketing technology, it goes a little something like this. We are a cloud-based, quantum-ready, blockchain-enabled, AI-powered, data-obsessed, customer-focused technology
times in this new normal, which gives you silver linings.
Exactly. And then we throw in, and then all of a sudden we'll throw in something like a curveball, like we'll be like, and we are, or like it could be anything. Oh, my favorite, the new one now, go find it on every solutions website, is we're fastest to value. Like it's so everyone, I feel like I'm playing a drinking game these days because I'm like fast to value, it just everyone, the Martech 9 billion or whatever that Clash of Clans map is.
7,460.
Here's one from Andrew Nebus. Cloud native single pane of glass. There you go.
Boom, Andrew, right there. High five, buddy. Yeah, it's like everyone sounds that ridiculous. And I know that we all want to sound that ridiculous because in the world of like functional, I got to get something out there and I got to get something out there to work in sales enablement. And I got to go out there and power jam things into the funnel. Nothing clogs the funnel like the goo of sameness, right? There's just nothing that makes it worse. So like my dare for
nothing clogs the funnel like the goo of sameness. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna have to cut you off. This is gonna be hard. We're here with Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst, Constellation's own, and of course the CMO Whisper. You can follow her at Liz K Miller, not Mueller, Miller. For the other guy out there. And hey, thanks for being on the show. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you back in the green room when we exit out.
Who says I have Monday off?
Yeah, that's right.
What's
the
Monday?
The boss man.
Yeah.
So awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, Liz. So
thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Ray. Oh my God, what? I mean, First of all, that hour felt like 5 minutes to me. I don't know about you, but Milan, Jim, Liz, like ridiculously smart, big brains. And I have to somehow summarize this in a ZDNet article. Yeah, I might have to do 3 separate articles. It was too much goodness to wrap it all in one. Your thoughts. By the way, before we go to your thoughts, next week, episode 192, we're getting close to 600 guests. I think we're at 579 right now. Howard Stephen Friedman, data scientist, health economist, and author of Ultimate Price, The Value We Place on Life. So we're going to talk to Mr. Friedman. Jody Cow, Chief Product Officer at Steam Sets, and Jack Vaughn, writer, analyst, researcher at Progressive Gauge. So again, 3 more big brains. But your thoughts in terms of our current episode 191.
Look, this is what we started. This is what we always wanted to talk about, right? Talking about innovation, getting leaders, right? Getting their insights, understanding the things that happen behind the scenes. You only get 20 minutes. It just blows by like per segment. We're going to have to get we got some special guests coming up, so we might have to do some special episodes. We won't.
You don't want to say about the June guests.
I won't say who. Maybe some, former world leaders, famous authors as well. But the show is, this has been wonderful. The ability for everyone here to share their knowledge, their insights with everybody, and to our almost 50,000 viewers a week, I think this is just incredible.
I want all 3 guests to consider coming back. Honestly, 20 minutes wasn't enough. They were all terrific, and just for me, it felt like 2-minute conversation. So, listen, if it's Friday, it's DisrupTV. Thank you so much. Recommend guests. Yes, we have the godfather of the internet coming in June. Yes, we have one of the biggest management legends, sold over 10 million books.
Tom Peters, who else?
Former Prime Minister of Australia. But anyway, we'll leave those names but these are all June guests. It's a privilege for us, and thank you for helping us stay teachable.
Yeah.
And we look forward to
have a safe
next week.
Memorial Day weekend, everyone, and stay safe, social distance, barbecue well, enjoy some of the weather, take the load off. The longest 8 weeks ever. Jim, if you're still in the green room, stay there. We'll come back and say hi. Thank you, everybody. So have a wonderful
Thanks, everyone.
weekend.
Thank you.